Welcome to Mind Over Matter, where science meets practical life mastery. Today, we are talking about habits, not the perfectionist kind, but the lasting kind that survive life's chaos. Our guest is Glen Lubbert, co founder and CEO of Stamina Lab, a health tech company helping people build energy, focus, and resilience by leveraging the strengths they already have. Forget shame or willpower. Tonight, we explore how to thrive when life gets messy. Welcome to the show, Glenn. It's such an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Anya. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Mhm. So, Glenn, most people struggle to stick to habits when life gets unpredictable. How does Stamina Lab approach this differently than traditional self-help advice?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And what it really comes down to is when we are trying to build our habits and our behaviors, it's really how we build our behaviors to, to achieve the goals that we want to have. We often try to build these habits that are rigid, that we want to repeat every time. And that's really the definition of a habit, is that it's repeatable, it's automatic, and we don't have to really think about it. It's just a habit that we automatically do. And that has its place. That's great for a lot of things. That's how we would get things done without having to think about everything. But it doesn't work for every behavior and everything we want to do. And in fact, and for most behaviors, a habit is too, like I said, too rigid and inflexible for really what we want to achieve. And what we do at Stamina Lab is we focus on a solution focused approach. And this solution focused approach is evidence based, science, plenty of science behind it. It's got hundreds and hundreds of studies, hundred meta studies. It's really well researched. And over the last 40 years, it's proven to really allow people to make the changes that they want to have in their lives and have it actually stick, have it actually sustain itself over time. And even like you said before, even when life gets messy, when things don't work out, this approach allows you to continue to move towards the future you want to have.
Yeah, that's amazing. And can someone really improve without fixing themselves first?
Yeah, because this is what is the heart of the solution focused approach, is that you are not broken and you do not need to be fixed. In fact, you're already on the path to being the person you want to be. Just by listening to this podcast right now, that's evidence that you are on the path to being the person you want to be. And that evidence is really what's important in this approach. Because when we look at a solution focused approach, first of all, we start, and I'm going to explain a little bit here about what we do. First of all, we start with, what do you want to have instead of where you are? What does that look like? You have to say what you want to have instead. For example, lots of times when we are trying to change our behaviors, we'll say, I want to stop eating cake, or I want to stop eating sugar, or I want to exercise more, or I want to stop sitting on the sofa every night, or any of these things I don't want to do. These are avoidance things. And so we really have to describe in as much detail as possible what you want instead. We like to use the metaphor of a cab driver. If you get into a cab and you tell the cab driver, and the cab driver says, "Okay, hello, where would you like to go today?" And you say, "Well, I don't want to go over there because that stresses me out. I don't want to go over there because that gives me anxiety, and I don't want to go over there because I don't want to eat. I don't want to eat sugar. I don't want to do this. I don't want to drink alcohol, or whatever the thing is." And the cab driver's like, looks back at you like, "Okay, I get that, but where do you want to go? I can't pull away from the curb until you tell me where you want to go." And that's kind of like how our brain works. When we say, "I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that," the brain doesn't know don't. It knows all the things about cake. It knows how it smells, how it tastes, how it feels in your mouth, all the things all the senses, it knows those. So when you say, "Don't eat cake," or "Don't drink wine," or "Don't do whatever you want to do," it only knows this description and all the feelings of this item. So it says, "Okay, but that's the direction you just highlighting for me." So what we say is to really have a clear idea of where you want the cab driver to take you. And do you want to have it in the most detail as possible, because just like the thing we're trying to avoid, the brain knows what that is. It needs to know what you want instead and the most detail. So that even, our brain doesn't know the difference between the past, present, or the future. So that's why we say don't eat cake. It knows what cake is. You want to just describe where you want to go, so that way the brain knows what it does, and it'll be like, okay, I'll figure a way to get there. And that really doesn't get into the why don't need to be fixed. Well, I can explain that too, but I wanted to pause and does that resonate? Does that make sense? Where you need to tell the cab driver where to go.
That's amazing, but I feel like that's such a practical example. Like, it made it so easy to understand, because I always say I should not do this, but I end up doing that. So
Yeah.
now I know I should say, like, I should do this instead.
Yeah, you need to know where to go. Yeah, and because otherwise, when we say we try to do something, our brain will say, "Oh, I can't do it because of this reason: time, money, energy, all the things that would block you." But when you describe what you want to do, the brain is so creative. And especially since you've already described it, and I told you it doesn't know the past, present, or the future, so it thinks you've already done it. So it'll figure a way to get there, even if time, money, energy, whatever the reason is, people, all the things that you think about blocking you that stop you, it will figure out a way to get there. And I think that's where what's the power of this comes to. We say there's many paths to the same river, and the river is that place you want to be. And not only describe where you want, where you want to go, but what difference is it going to make for you? What difference is it going to make for you? And you can ask that question multiple times, because it really say, okay, well, if I don't drink the wine, then that's an avoidance goal. But if I drink water, okay, that's what I want to do instead. Okay, if I drink water, what will that do? Oh, I'll feel hydrated. Okay, if I feel hydrated, my skin will be better. If I have energy, I'll be able to rest and sleep better. What difference will that make? We'll have more energy. And then what difference will that make? We'll all be able to do basically all the goals you want to have in life. And they usually get to love and happiness and friendship, if you ask the question enough times. But because that really helps you have a real intrinsic desire and motivation for what you want to do, rather than the avoidance thing. Now you have this, wait a second, I want to have the energy and have the fun with my friends and my family, and be able to do the creative project I want to do, or the job I want to do at the best level, or run the marathon, or whatever it is. You're like, wow, I want to have that future. And that's much different of a feeling to be doing, rather than try to avoid something. You're like, no, I want that beautiful picture I just described. And so when the times get tough, when life gets messy, that's when you tap into that what difference will it make? That direction you want to go, because then there's many paths to the same river. So if we said if this is a rigid habit, and the rigid habit was, all right, I'm going to do 10 push-ups every morning, which is going to give me my strength and my energy for the day. But then I'm in a hotel, or I'm visiting somebody, there's not enough room to do the 10 push-ups, or I'm tired, or whatever the reason, all the things, time, energy, money, things, all the things are going to block you. You'll be like, all right, well, I didn't do my habit. So I feel the guilt of not doing my habit. I have the shame of not doing my habit. I'm like, what the hell? I missed a day. I missed 2 days. I'm on vacation. I missed 4 days. Okay. I screwed it up, and I'm over it. I have to get back on the wagon, whatever. But now, if your desire is what you want instead is to be a healthy person, then wow, the push-ups are just one way to do that. Okay, now I could be like, there's so many paths to that same river. I could be like, okay, well, I wasn't able to do my 10 habits or 10 push-ups today, but maybe I could walk a little bit further today. Maybe I could park further from the grocery store and walk. There's many different ways that I can still achieve that same goal. So where a habit is rigid, that just to do that one thing, a solution-focused approach where you have where you want to go and what difference will that make, you have many ways to get there, even when time, money, people block you.
Yeah, that's refreshing. Like, it's not about overhauling your life, but recognizing the resources already inside you.
Yes. Now this is where the key comes into this. This is you just tapped right into that, Anya. Is because that's where you are not broken. Because what we could say is like the where we talked about the evidence that you are already on that path, and that's what this listening to that podcast. That's evidence that you're already on that path. Is describe where you want to go, but then how we have to now we're gonna be like our own detective in our life, and we're gonna look for the evidence where we are already on that path. So one example we have with our client at Stamina Lab, we had a client who everyone's trying to reduce their sugar, because sugar's everywhere and it's not great for us. So everyone's trying to reduce their sugar. So, we had a session and he came back from the session and he's like, oh, I'm beating myself up, the guilt, the shame, because I had a half a pint of ice cream. Oh, yeah, I had a half a pint of ice cream. Now, traditionally, you would say, okay, well, let's figure out why you had that half a pint of ice cream. Let's do the root cause. Why did you have that? And then once we know why you had that, we're gonna be able to replace that behavior with something else that is more aligned with you. Makes a lot of sense. Let's figure out the root cause of why that happened, and then we'll put a new solution in place. And so, but the problem with that is that if we did that route, then the client would say, well, why did you have the half pint ice cream? Well, my ex-wife called, and then we got into a argument about the kids, and then I was stressed out already from work, and now I just had to make that client go back and relive that whole experience again. So now they're even more stressed out, feel guilt and shame again, and they're all constricted. They're not even thinking about solutions, and the reality is that's even if we replace the behavior, the next time your ex-wife calls, do this instead. Okay, great. But there's like hundreds of other things that could stress me out or get me frustrated that where I want to go to eat the half a pint of ice cream. So what we do, here's where there's evidence that you're already on the path to change. This is where you're not broken. The broken person would look at it and say, oh, you're broken. You need to be fixed. You need to fix that problem. We need to fix that. That's what the a traditional approach would do. Here, when we're looking for evidence change, evidence that you're already on that path to being that healthy person, the one that eats healthier, is to say, not asking any of those questions. When that person said, I'm feeling bad because I ate half a pint of ice cream, we said to him, what kept you from eating the full pint of ice cream? What kept me from eating the full pint of ice cream? Well, I didn't eat the full pint of ice cream because once I had it a little bit, I realized, I'm a healthy person and don't want to eat that much ice cream. And I had my taste, but that was good enough. I wanted to stop because so now we've just shifted the whole conversation from the guilt and shame and trying to fix something that pretend wasn't working, wasn't doing right, to saying, wait a second, no, you did something here. Yeah, you had to have a pint of ice cream, but you didn't eat that full pint of ice cream. So what did you do right then? And we just ask, what else did you do? What else did you? And they list all the resources that you just said, all the resources that they are bringing to the table in that situation. And now they feel so much different in the situation. We hear over and over, wow, I'm further along than I thought I was. I'm doing better than I thought I was. That's a common thing that people say after one of our sessions, because now they look at it and say, wait a second, this is what I did do. And the next time something happens, whether it's the ex-wife calling or whatever stress is happening in their life, and even if they go back and have some more ice cream, they remembered that all the things that they did last time. And now this time, maybe they only eat a quarter pint of the ice cream. Or maybe they don't even eat it at all. Or even if they do eat some more, they can remember, wait a second, I want to stop because of all the things that I know I can do. And it's all evidence of the capacity and the agency the person has inside them for change. And you're just, with the questions that we ask with our solution focused approach, you're identifying these questions. So even when life gets messy, they are still evidence that you are on the path to being that person you want to be, and we're highlighting that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, why do so many habit change programs fail to account for human messiness?
Well, because most of them are built on this root cause analysis approach. Okay, let's find the root of the problem and try to fix that. But like I said with the example, there's it's rigid, and it doesn't account for all the things that could possibly happen. So that's when life gets messy. So a habit is something that is automatic. It has a trigger or an anchor that triggers it, and then you do the habit. And you have a reward, which is potentially the habit that you can reward yourself at the end of the tiny habits method, which is one I'm very familiar with, and it was certified in. Is you have that anchor, and you have the new behavior, and you have the habit. But the challenge is that anchor that is in context of where you're at, who you're with. And so what life gets messy when there's bad weather that changes the context. There is you're in vacation, you're traveling. That's a big one. All the contexts it's the weekend. The weekend has different triggers or anchors than the weekdays. So there's all these, there's so many, someone you could have your family visiting, your sister visiting, your uncle visiting, whatever. So that could throw off your triggers. There's so many, life is so messy that there's so many variables that could throw off your anchor or your trigger, that it's so difficult to just have something to say, yes, when this happens, then do this. Because yes, sometimes that will happen. And then we throw in the guilt and shame that comes around with that. I was like, oh, I'm not keeping up on my habit. And then that spirals into feeling bad. And emotions create our behaviors. So when we have those negative emotions, then that puts a roadblock up in our behaviors. And so we stop, we don't go down, keep going down there. We feel bad, and it limits our progress. But when we look at it from, what we are doing, the capacity that we are doing, and that there's many different ways that I can still be that healthy person, even in the context of the weekend or the travel, or the family visiting or whatever. Like, for example, one of the things I love to do is when I'm traveling, okay, I'm a runner, and I can't run all the time when I'm traveling, especially on a travel day. So what can I do? Well, I can walk the concourse instead of taking the people walker, or the escalator. I can walk up the stairs instead of doing that. So there's many different ways that I could still be that active person on days, even when life gets messy, which is the travel day.
Yeah, definitely. And that's crucial. Like, life isn't linear. So our habits shouldn't be either, right?
Yeah.
Resilience over rigidity. Mhm. And you talk about inner resources. Can you explain what that means and how can someone identify them?
So our inner resources, those are, like I said, those are the resources that we get from being intrinsically connected to what we want to have and what we want to do. And that's really where you get that. Where you really want to ask that question is not only what do you want to have instead, wherever your life is, and wherever you want to go, you have to ask, okay, not that I don't want this, but what do I want instead? So we don't ask ourselves that question a lot. Like, oh, okay, like, people complain, like people love complaining. Okay, and I always say, okay, great. Well, what do you want instead? Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I just know I don't want that. I know I don't want that. So just by asking, what do I want instead? That's starting to get to an inner resource. And then asking, well, what difference will that make? What difference will that make for myself? And sometimes that question's hard, because that's really going to get to a deeper inner resource, is when I ask, what difference is that going to make? Because that's really asking me my values. What's important to me? And we don't ask ourselves that question a lot. Some people try to take a values test and whatnot. Well, those are just check boxes and on a sheet. But when you ask, what difference will that make for me to go after that goal I want to have, or that what difference, what I want instead? When I ask what difference will it make, sometimes that's hard. So we often ask, okay, if it's hard for you to ask what difference will it make, ask yourself, what will you notice you'd be doing differently? Or what would other people notice you'd be doing differently? What would your spouse know, your friends know, that when you were doing, when you get to that instead, would that look like? What would you be noticing that you'd be doing? What would your spouse be noticing, or friends be noticing, or even what would your pet be noticing? So sometimes that's like people are so connected to their pets that you say, what would your dog notice? And we had a client that said she had one cat that was so ornery, never was cuddly, was just in its corner, meh. And as she started going towards this on this journey, and what she wanted to have instead, she wanted to be more gentle, more kind. What difference that would make? That was going to make her friends feel more calm, and basically calm was whatever things. The cat started noticing. She's like, the cat has been cuddling with me recently. This is the mean cat. The cat noticed that she was doing something differently. And so that's a great way for you to really get to that inner resource of, the fire that's in your belly, is ask, what would I be doing? What would I do instead? What would I notice I'd be doing? Even the smallest thing that I'd be doing.
Yeah, 100%. But also, once they know their strengths, how do they start building on them daily?
Yeah. So again, it's not so much. We say strength. We like to say strengths because we talk about strengths. But I really like to. You mentioned it before, the resources. I really like to shift the thinking to looking for the resources, or the capacity looking for noticing the capacity that you have, that you're already on the path to change, because your strengths got you to where you are. The strengths got you to where you are. And if you're stuck somewhere, those are great. Those strengths work. They work for you for a while, but you're trying to change. You want to go somewhere instead. So you have to be your own detective and look for where you have the capacity to change. So you're already, like I said, you're already on that path. So all you're doing is being the detective to notice each time. It's about, being mindful is another way of noticing. We're saying noticing a lot, but it's being mindful of, oh, wait a second. Oh, I chose to have water this morning, or I chose to go for a walk this morning. Just looking for evidence of where you're already doing it, and that builds momentum. That builds momentum. It's like, oh, because once you keep identifying all the areas that you are doing it, wait a second. Like I said, people say, I'm further along than I thought I was, because they're like, oh, wait a second, I did this, and a lot of times in our coaching sessions, this is one fundamental solution focused practices. We just repeat back all the things you said. Now, you could be like on a tangent and talk about something you're frustrated with, but there's things you need to do, and I'm like, well, oh yeah, this is I keep failing at this, and I keep doing this wrong. And I'm like, well, what keeps you going back to doing it? How do you keep trying? And they're like, oh, I do keep trying. And even in frustration and quote unquote failure, you keep going back, and there's strength in that. There's a resource in that. There's capacity to change in the fact that you keep going back. So it's really just looking for that. And that's how you build on, not on strengths, but on the momentum you already have in your life.
Yeah, definitely. And that's powerful, because growth isn't about adding more, it's about activating what's already there.
Ah, yeah, you got that. Yeah, totally.
And for listeners feeling stuck, even after trying multiple habit systems, what's your advice to start moving forward today?
Yeah. So, really, what you want to do is, understand where you want to go. Where do you want to tell the cab driver to go, and then ask yourself, what's one thing I could do, even the smallest, after this podcast you're listening, what's one thing you could do, even the smallest thing that would tell you that you are on the path to being that person. Even the smallest thing that say, hey, you know what? I am on that path. Maybe after this call, if being a healthy person was one of your things, maybe after the call, you would go get that drink of water, or you would go for a walk. Even the smallest thing that would tell you that you are on that path to change. That's what you're looking for, and just continue to look for those ideas, or even every day or every moment. Ask yourself, okay, what's one thing I could do right now, even the smallest thing tell me on that, because those build up and those add up. And it doesn't have to be a specific rigid habit. It could be anything. Many paths to the same river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's practical and encouraging because small intentional steps that overwhelming overhauls every time.
Yeah. And it just, again, it's not that it doesn't have to be so rigid, because life gets messy. So even when life gets messy, when it's well, can I swear? Even when it's a shitstorm out there, what you could ask yourself, what's one thing I could do, even the smallest thing? And it could be so small. It could be take a breath, but just to say that, hey, I'm still on that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So thank you, Glenn, for showing us that lasting change doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness, strategy, and trust in your own inner capacity. And to everyone listening, embrace your mess, leverage your strengths, and watch your habits thrive, no matter what life throws at you. Keep your mind strong and your spark alive.